perform that. We are being recorded. You heard Canned Heat talking about working together. And I thought I would have the most vintage piece of all of the walk-up songs, but there went Mark Wiederspan yesterday playing a little Bob Dylan from 1965. I don't even know if Mark was born back then, but when my song was released, I was in high school. So I remember it well. Just like Mark's reference to the Dylan song and the restless, turbulent times that were going on when that song was released, and mirroring those issues of today. But hard times can lead to good things when people galvanize their efforts and work together, such as our LCAN entities are underway, are doing. One of the lines in the song says, "Things go wrong as they sometimes will, and the road you travel seems all uphill." And that is certainly true, not just with the pandemic, but with so many barriers that face the students we aim to help in areas of college access. My favorite thing, and the last thing I'll mention about the song, is that I love its inclusivity. Every boy, girl, woman, and a man, didn't leave anybody out, men, women, and people of all ages. So it ended with last verse that's about make someone happy, make someone smile. And we hope that is the outcome of our collective efforts. Post-secondary success for all, smiles all around. Okay. Now, proceeding to the next. I'm on full page and I'm not advancing my PowerPoint. So let's see. See what I mean about technology? It just keeps me a little bit on edge sometimes. So I'm trying to figure out, Tressa, any suggestions?
Yeah, what happens if you just click on the right side of the screen?
On the right side.
Are your arrow keyboard buttons not working?
Don't seem to be, but I'm going to see if I can pull this down and, okay. Thanks everyone for your patience. And while I'm doing that, I want to just reference a word of welcome to everybody. I really appreciate this opportunity and appreciate that some folks got up and are here to listen and learn. Please use the chat box throughout if you want to offer any comments or questions. Okay, where do I need to go here? I think I need to go here and then go here. And I'm back to my screen. Are you seeing my screen?
Yeah, I'm still seeing the first page of your slideshow.
Yeah, all right, so I need to.
Actually, it looks like if you hover in the lower left.
There we go. I see that now. Yep. All right.
Yeah.
It just, and I was able to fill in with a couple of comments I wanted to make anyway. So, yep, this is simply the title page. And thank you, Tressa, for sharing my introduction and making it sound even more interesting than it was in the written form. So here we continue. Well, we're going to get started, and here we are gathered for a meeting via Zoom. I found this little cartoon, and I would just say I so prefer in-person meetings. I have adapted to Zoom in its most basic uses, and how about Sylvia's adaptations yesterday? She has really reached expert status. It was pretty dizzying to watch her pull up charts, create sticky notes, move them around, delete the ones that were not needed, all of that while guiding conversation and drawing connections. I just say, wow. So we'll just leave it at that. I'm a basic user. I want to begin to share my philosophical base for facilitating meetings, because I believe that our team meetings really hold promise as a space for creating relationships that gird the work we do to support college access and attainment. By gathering the right people, those representatives of different organizations, the ralliers, the thinkers, and the doers, we have a shot at doing some great work. And I'm sharing today my experiences in the role of meeting facilitator, born of being part of virtually thousands of meetings throughout my work history and my family life. I'm hoping that you I'm hoping to extend some insights of value to you. And I think of this as a 101 level presentation by someone with a 901 level appreciation for the potential and value of an effective meeting. Let's consider Fred Rogers' take. Love Mr. Rogers and his take on life. And even though in this quote, he is referring to being a good neighbor and a citizen of the world, we can apply his message to the meetings in which we engage. If you could only sense how important you are to the lives of those you meet, there is something of yourself that you leave at every meeting with another person. So it's my philosophical stance, my belief that meetings matter when people matter and our efforts matter. And I know we all know how much our efforts matter to the youth, to the young people with whom we're working. So when I was in graduate school at the University of Iowa, Nancy Schlossberg had done some research and had written about it in a publication that I favored reading all the time. She spoke about mattering and marginality. These constructs were applied to higher education as a way to search for ways to more fully involve students in learning. Involvement is defined as the amount of physical and psychological energy that the student devotes to the academic experience, the amount of student learning and personal development associated with any educational program is directly proportional to the quality and quantity of student involvement in that program. And that involvement creates connections that allow individuals to believe and be aware of their own personal worth, to be aware of our mutual relatedness and the fact that community is a desirable and essential condition of human survival. So given that, our goal in our particular roles as coordinators or members of leadership teams for college access, our goal is to increase student involvement, just as Schlossberg's work about purposeful design of activities, involvement for students so that they explore, they secure funding, they enroll, and they complete post-secondary education. I know that you're already beginning to connect the dots here between this mattering and meetings. We are well aware of the many things that divide and separate us. Differences in our ethnicity, race, gender, age, social class, lifestyle preferences, our emotional resources, our financial standing, political views, just to name a few. But what is it that connects us? Are we central or are we marginal? So the construct or the concept of mattering, that indicates a person is important, they're appreciated, they're valued. A person who matters feels a part, feels that they belong, feels that central to that, and feel as if they make a difference. On the opposite end, the polar opposite is marginality. That's the state where a person feels ignored, maybe shunned, separated, or being on the fringe. People in transition often feel marginal. Think about events that alter our lives, entering school, entering college, and in fact, any school transitions like moving on to middle school or moving on to high school, moving to a new city, moving to a new school, especially when it might be in the middle of an academic year, starting a new job, retiring from one's career, joining a new group. I'd add, coming out, all sorts of things. Every transition raises the potential for feeling marginal, especially if norms for the new role are unknown or do not exist. So at this point, we're gonna formally connect the dots, mattering and marginality with respect to meetings. If we think about that connection, maybe we take a moment to examine your team meetings and to what degree participants feel they matter. I listed a few things to which I'm sure you could add other things, but things like one's onboarding experience when you enter the team. And in my case, I was onboarded after the team already had existed for a couple of years. I had a great onboarding experience. So welcoming new people to the team, making sure that you meet with them face-to-face if possible, but via Zoom or some other online connection so that information is shared, background is provided, questions are answered. Other things like just taking a personal approach with each individual member of the team. Strong and consistent and regular communication with members of the team, both as individuals and as the group. You can gauge mattering from looking at your attendance at meetings. While it's for certain that people miss meetings when they really would prefer to be there, there are other things that happen. In general, strong meeting attendance, a high rate of attendance is associated with it matters. The work we are doing matters. Our relationships amongst one another matter. The meeting has meaning for me, therefore I'm going to make every effort to be there in a consistent fashion. Engagement during the meeting helps team members feel that they matter. If a meeting is a sit and get, we could just as well send an email, right? But if a meeting is engaging and folks are involved, they have a chance to talk, to interact, etc., that helps people feel they matter. One's longevity with the group, unless a group's bylaws indicate staying on the team for a certain length of time. Most of us are like lifers, like the life of the grant anyway, with this work, and people's staying power with the task indicates that it matters to them. Productivity after the meeting, as the meeting is going on and after it concludes, do we feel like we accomplished some things? Do we feel like we stirred up some dust? Did we uncover some good stuff? Did we make some plans for action, and then movement towards success. Obviously, if a group remains static and does not have any data to show that progress is being made, that can really stymie any feelings of mattering. And certainly in the context of the pandemic, we're having some moments where we're trying to regain some momentum. We're trying to keep some momentum and keep some forward movement going. But that's really important to mattering. Perhaps you're sitting and thinking of other connections, other aspects of meetings that make it matter. Why we meet is important. I alluded earlier that if the meeting could be accomplished, if the tasks of a particular meeting are important enough to meet, then we meet. We have that meeting. We have regular meetings. I thought of 3 reasons that our teams meet. Really is a great format for professional development. If you think about what you learn about yourself through what you share, what you learn about others around the table, around the room, or around the screen, the things you gain by hearing other people's perspectives. Everybody brings different ideas, different background, different experiences, and so it's a professional development opportunity each time we have a team meeting. Another reason is that we're making decisions that produce direction. We're formulating strategies, dealing with problems that need attention, need resolution. And we're trying to come up with creative responses to challenges that face the group, our group, and the students whom we serve. And then a third one is just that we're building and strengthening our collective capabilities, that capacity that's been talked about by several people before me, and our performance around a common agenda. That's really the beauty of it, is we come from many different places, come together with a common and very urgent agenda. It comes down to this, I think. If you're going to facilitate a meeting that you want to be effective, you have to pay attention to 3 key pieces. Very simply stated, it's what you do before the meeting, what you do during the meeting, and what you do after the meeting. And I've made some details here that I've embedded some details, and I will just kind of quickly address a few of these. Rather obvious beforehand, you're inviting folks, preferably an invitation that requires a response. I accept, I'm tentative, or I have to decline. You may, in your email that you send folks, get creative, maybe try some attention-getting greetings. I like to do this once in a while. I remember one of my professors in higher ed at Iowa did this so effectively, and saying things like, "To the gregarious and gracious gentle persons of DCAN," and then going on, and I think you've got their attention. Or to the dignified and dauntless DCAN members, or to the courageous and considerate colleagues of DCAN. These, hopefully, they're complimentary. Yes, they're intended to be. They also raise the bar about expectations, and hopefully serve as some self-fulfilling prophecy for what we'll all bring to the meeting and accomplish. You can use a whole assortment of phrases like plucky and grand and stout-hearted and fearless and generous, and have fun with that. Include a draft agenda, and within that agenda, you want to identify topics, that will be the focus of discussion. What kind of timing, not just the start and end time of the meeting, but as I glance at the clock right now in the corner of my screen, I realize I have to keep pushing because I'm a talker. But timing, forecasting, I think this will take about 5 or 10 minutes. This section will take 10 or 15, and just making sure that the amount of time you forecast does not exceed the amount of time you have available for the meeting. You can outline particular roles. There may be people with specific roles. Be sure you let them know that ahead of time. And the calendar of regular meetings in advance, so that people can anticipate and have it saved, have a placeholder in their calendar for this very important gathering. And then you can beforehand acknowledge those who might be newcomers to the group. You can briefly share some team members' news, especially if you have news about someone that may not be able to attend, and just sit in anticipation of good things to happen. And then we get to the during piece. It was in a collective impact forum that was held early in the summer that I first heard this phrase, and I italicized it to indicate that it's a quote, but I can only say it came from a collective impact forum. I can't name the person who came up with this great quote: to mix the fun with the deep during your meeting. It's serious work we're doing, no doubt, but mixing the fun, changing things up, giving people some things to look forward to, maybe including a few surprises, whether it be candy bars strewn around the table if you're in person, or whatever. I mentioned things like being there to welcome people when they arrive. I wasn't always good at that because it seemed like I was tending to some last minute issues more often than not, but being there to welcome as the teacher stands at the doorway to the classroom and welcomes each child, letting each know they matter. I aspire to do that at meetings as well. Having name placards came up with that idea, and it's great for whether you're a continuing member or a new member. It helps you to get to know the names of people around the table. We always have a sign-in sheet, which is just another way to invite accountability, keep track of who's there for your summary you'll do later. Too bad we can't have refreshments this morning. I would have had a juice and a scone for you, fresh baked, but Zoom doesn't allow for that, unfortunately. Provide people with choices. Typically they choose, where they'll sit. Maybe there are roles that need to be fulfilled and they can choose to do those. Sometimes you might check in on the order of things. If you're running out of time, what can we hold till next meeting? What's the most important thing we should do with the remaining time? Always allow time for mixing and sharing. I think inviting people to share something personal is really great. Letting people share part of their story, connected to the work that's underway. I remember early on in my coordinator role with LCAN, we spent the first portion of a meeting in small groups where we shared our own college access stories with each other. And these stories shared became the focus of introductions of one another to the large groups. It was the first thing we did even before, it was like a pre-meeting activity. And then we introduced one another, which prompted us to listen very well to one another, so that we could, and take notes perhaps, so that we could offer a great introduction. If we're going to support college access in our communities, sharing the story of our own path to college is vital and important to that end. interaction time, things like a pair share on the Zoom format using a breakout, giving people a task. I had planned until I realized this was a Zoom webinar and not a regular Zoom. I had planned to give people some time to talk about some meeting facilitation experiences you've had, either as a facilitator yourself or in a meeting you were attending, just to share, because I'm probably not touching, a quarter of the great ideas out there that we could have shared with one another. Having some small group discussion, always having a report back function. During the meeting, challenge people, invite their responses, encourage them to take risks. Always keep track of your time, and then summarize as you're winding down and make plans for the next meeting. Thank everybody, and then if possible, remain available beyond the meeting time if folks have need for further conversation with you. I always thought when I scheduled the meetings that we had at the foundation office, ending at say 1:30, I always booked until 2, and oftentimes conversation filled that last half hour while I sort of like did the tear down so that the room would be ready for the next group. But banking on extra time to connect with people beyond the formal meeting is a great idea. And then after, summarize key points. I relied heavily on a few folks who provided copies of the notes that they took during the meeting. I will tell you, Megan Sybil is an awesome note taker, and she provided me many times some outlined versions of meeting notes. So valuable. Acknowledge people's contributions, communication and carry out follow-up actions, all of that, because you're already beginning to link to the before piece of the next meeting. I didn't intend to take so long on that, but yeah, I get pretty excited. So a great resource that I've discovered, it's a favorite of mine. I used it as a principal the last number of years after it came out. It's called Caffeinated Learning, and you get it, that if you've had your coffee in the morning, you're ready to go. Maybe you have just that extra little buzz, little jolt, and we want meetings and professional development sessions to have that feeling. And a few takeaways from that book, that thoughtful design, whether it's a full day professional development session or an hour and a half long meeting, that'll increase the likelihood of accomplishing your objectives. Honor what each team member brings to the meeting. Make sure they know they matter. Pay attention to the little details. It can make a big difference in outcomes. There's a connection to movement and learning, and a connection between novelty and readiness to absorb new information. And I'm just going to share a little bit of what that research said regarding novelty. Neuroscientists have found that exposure to unexpected or novel experiences causes a chemical to be released in the brain. Norepinephrine produces a heightened state of alertness. Presenters who know this can weave novelty into their session so that adult learners are attentive and ready to absorb new information. And then regarding movement, other research studies clearly show the connection between movement and learning. Oxygen is essential for brain function, and enhanced blood flow increases the amount of oxygen transported to the brain. Physical activity is a reliable way to increase blood flow and hence oxygen to the brain. Presenters who know this, or facilitators, can weave movement into their design so that brain function is optimal for prolonged learning experiences. And then a final takeaway is that, preparation is key, but you can't prepare for every eventuality. So always exercise a flexible mindset. no matter how many times or how carefully you try to craft what will, how long things will take, etc. You know, our human condition is that we often need more or less than that. And so, as I mentioned earlier, giving people choices, if there's just this much time left and we need to end at a certain time because the room is going to be taken over or the Zoom call is going to end, have others help you choose what to use the remaining time for. I just made a copy of page 121 from the Caffeinated Learning book because it is a particularly effective movement-producing activity. Early on in the early stages of my DCAN coordinator role, when we were grappling with a fairly wordy draft of the common agenda that had been constructed prior to my arrival. So we use this. Here's, I don't know if you can read it, it appears to be pretty small. It's called Vote with Your Feet, and prefaces that ongoing assessment's a necessary part of effective instruction. Voting with your feet utilizes the kinesthetic response to give facilitators some quick assessment information and provides participants with the chance to share opinions and connect more personally to the content. So we had two large signs, one that said strongly agree, and that was placed at the far, say, left side of the room, and another sign that says strongly disagree and placed on the wall on the far other side of the room. And participants it's explained that this is a continuum from a strongly disagree to a strongly agree, but many intermediate positions between those two polar opposites. So everybody stands up and they await the reading of the first statement. And what I did was I took segments or chunks of the common agenda draft and invited people to react to them. Said to them, you know, vote with your feet, and they would move to wherever on that continuum they felt matched their response to that segment, that statement. Might have been a sentence, might have just been a phrase. And then as everybody looks around, they can begin to draw conclusions and make observations and kind of talk to the people that are close to them. But it's great asking a few individuals who are either at opposite ends or maybe somebody who's right in the middle to explain why they chose their positions. And through those comments, you get, it really, that activity really took us off of a place where, you know, we had been kind of stuck. And after that, we made some great progress in subsequent sessions with finalizing our common agenda. Okay, I think I have moved to my last slide. I hear the virtual applause in the background. Here I am paraphrasing Mr. Rogers. And from the same book that I referenced earlier, called The World According to Mr. Rogers, Important Things to Remember. I call it The World According to LCAN's Important Things to Remember. My first point is that as college access team members, our job is to help one another realize how valuable each one of us really is, that each one of us has something unique to offer, and our job to encourage each other, to exercise that uniqueness and to provide ways of expressing it, all with the goal of supporting students and members of our community. In every LCAN community across Iowa, there are good people insisting on a good start for the young and partnering with others to assure that the good start and its continuation from school to workforce is afforded to each and every student. One of the greatest dignities of humankind is that we invest in the welfare of the next generation. So in closing, facilitating effective meetings is one important way that we conduct our work. Let's be sure to make those meetings matter. I get to take a nice long breath now and invite questions or comments.
Thank you, Donna. We did have a question. You kind of touched on it a little bit already, but maybe you could go into a little more detail of how you get such great attendance at your meetings. Is there 1 to 2 key things that you personally do that you feel are totally critical to driving good attendance?
Well, yeah, I tried to touch on that. I'm trying to bring me up here. I'm hitting Zoom. Anyway, that's
stop sharing your screen.
Oh, okay. Stop share. Oh, Tressa, you're so helpful. Hey, everybody. I think if I go back to that one list, and I don't know where I put that piece, but the idea of that mattering theme, making sure that people are welcomed, making sure that they have a good experience at the meeting, that they have, we have a calendar, a year-long calendar of meetings, and I think people, as we talk about, does this get in the way of any regular meeting you have? Is this a good day? And this is my 3rd year, we have remained pretty consistent with meeting times. Zoom threw us off a little bit because we used to meet midday and we'd have a little light. Once we started our work teams, our action teams, we'd we'd have that meeting first in person. We'd have a transition, bit of lunch and break, and then we'd move into our full group. I think that's an important thing. We tried to make it very convenient for folks, around a noon hour, providing a bite to eat so they didn't have to worry about bringing food or going to lunch later or putting their day all out of whack. When we started our action teams in the fall of 2019, we made a very, intentionally keeping it at the same time as the regular group meeting. We just started, we expanded the time a bit. We started a little earlier. And we have about 70% attendance on average at our meetings. I'd love to hear from someone who's out there, who's a member of our team, who might say, this is what keeps me coming.
So Donna, this is Paul. Can you hear me?
Hi, Paul. Yes, good morning.
Thanks for your update. So when I think about attendance at your meetings, or for example, your common agenda signing, you're all about the personal invite, whether that's an email to that individual or a phone call. I just put in the comment section, you're not afraid to pick up the phone and call the mayor, call the school superintendent, and make them feel personally welcomed and encourage them or accommodate them. And that takes a lot of effort and time. You have a large group of stakeholders that you reach out to, but I just think that your personal touch goes a long way to making people feel welcome, and then also committed. Like I need to be there now because Donna reached out. So I wouldn't downplay that.
Excellent. And your comment prompted me to think too that maybe by, the very nature of, I didn't really retire. I retooled. I love that word. I retooled. And because I did not want to give up contact with youth. That is the lifeblood of my existence. As a youngster, I wanted to be, have a family of 10. we were blessed just once through adoption efforts, and I always had my family at school, my additional students. So I didn't want to give that up. Neither did I want to give up my connections with the community, of which I feel like I really matter to, and the community really matters to me. And I didn't want to give up those important connections. I'm finding in retirement that I've had to say no at least twice as many times as I say yes to things, because it is very easy to get pulled into so many things. And that's, it's just, you take that as a compliment and you say, maybe when this finishes, I can start that. But I think people do recognize my real passion for working with youth and continuing in the, educational. I'm a lifelong learner. I can't think of a span of more than a year in my entire 65 plus since I went to school first at age 5 that I haven't been in school in some way, shape, or form. And I'm hoping that verve is contagious, and I just appreciate more than people can know. The coming together and working together. It's so very satisfying.
We have a comment from Carol. We try to involve young people on all of our teams, and mattering and feeling that they make a difference is critical to keeping them involved.
Absolutely, Carol. Some of the most enjoyable parts of our DCAN work have been, Paul referenced the signing the Common Agenda event, where we had 5 local students, 2, let's see, one was, 2 were from Northeast Iowa Community College, one from senior high school, one from Hempstead High School, and one from Loras College. And they each got to witness about, share their college access story or their path a little bit. They were very prominently featured along with other, others, movers and shakers in the community, our leadership team, et cetera. And then like last March, right before we all left the offices and went home to work, we had an event that was part of a career day that Kelly Cooper and the Dubuque Area Labor Management Council oversaw. But we had an hour of time that day. So we had 5 first-generation local college students did a panel in the auditorium for a pretty large group of attendees. And again, they were just telling their story, offering advice. They were, in most cases, a year close to age. And we need to have their voices at the table, because they are so much more listenable to young people than, Donna's a grandma. I don't act like a grandma, but hearing from their peers is really powerful. So having their voices involved, whether at special events, and if you're having them at the actual meetings, that's more power to you. Good job.
I will also second the personal invite being so crucial. I like to guilt people into coming to my meetings. I'm like, you will personally let me down if you don't come. But you're so much kinder and nicer in your approach. Awesome. If anybody wants to discuss anything, I think I've unmuted everybody that I can. A few folks that said your version of Zoom wasn't working for it, but everybody else should be unmuted if you had any thoughts or questions.
Yeah, I had something I wanted to say real quick. So we talked a lot about the personal invite and kind of that work beforehand, and of course how great Donna is at that. But I also want to highlight something that she talked about that she does very well, which is the follow-up afterwards. I know that when I started as an LCAN coordinator, I was kind of, unsure of what I was doing, not sure if I was moving in the right direction. And we hosted a convening to kind of talk about some statistics and things we thought were important to know about LGBTQ youth in our community. And afterwards, I sent it out to LCAN coordinators just for them to watch. I think it was some useful information. And within a day, I'd gotten an email back from Donna with specific feedback and mentioning specific statistics that she thought were interesting. And to me, that was so exciting that someone else had found this as powerful as I had. And I think if we can apply that to our meetings, that's going to go a long way.
Absolutely. Donna is amazing at Followup, 100%.
Well, I'm just humbled to be in the midst of so many wonderfully affirming folks. You're all the kings and queens of affirmation this morning. And the PowerPoint that I used, just to tell you a little backdrop on my morning, I had revised it several times over the last couple of days. And when I brought it up this morning, it was like the unrevised version. Oh, great. Well, it worked. I don't even know what I had changed that maybe mattered. It didn't matter because all of you matter, and I appreciate. I just looked at some of the comments. I can't tell in all cases who they're from, but thank you for that affirmation, and I hope to continue to work with the likes of you all for years to come. Hey, Jackie, thank you for your comment. I ditto to you. So thank you for this opportunity, Megan and Ann. I hope that I met expectations, and I hope everybody gets a chance to look into a little bit more about mattering and marginality. I had reams of other notes to share, but if I piqued your interest in it, that is a big accomplishment.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Donna. And we'll be sharing Donna's materials out in the Google Drive next week. Other than that, we'll end this one, and we'll hopefully see you all at the 10 o'clock session.
Let's work together. Yeah, let's work together. Bye now.
Perfect. Thanks,
Thank you
Donna.
so much, Donna.